is probably the most intimate part of human life. Actually, it's even more intimate than money. I strongly believe that in 10 years from now, telecommunication service is going to be free of charge. I don't even remember when last time I paid cash. Probably 15 years ago. Each telco more or less having around 30 million customers. Amount of investments which we're putting in the cybersecurity is exceptional.
You can actually extract data in ways that provide huge value whilst also keeping those important people, the regulators, happy, right?
We know exactly who is there, when they are, what are they doing. The way in telco world, we're saying we know which SIM card sleeps with which SIM card. It's at the same time with the confidential computing and addresses the challenge which you have with the regulator.
So I'm delighted to welcome George Held to Confidentially Yours. Really nice to have you, George. Fantastic meeting you. And the first thing I like to do is just find out a little bit about my guests, where they come from, how they got there. So tell me the story of who you are and what you do and why you enjoy it. Tell me a bit about that, please, George.
Mike, at first, good afternoon or good morning of your time. And it's really exciting to be here because obviously I heard lots of great things about the show and I'm really keen to be a part of it.
Thank you so much.
So presently I'm CTIO of the company called Azercell, which is a leading telco provider. We provide fixed and mobile services in Azerbaijan, in the beautiful city of Baku and surrounding areas. Actually, 2 days ago, we celebrated the Victory Day, which is a major celebration in the country. And what we're doing is we enable people across the country to communicate with each other. And we're doing it via mobile phones, we're doing it via television, we're doing it via fixed networks, so we're combining people together.
Sure.
So what really drives me and makes me really excited about Azerbaijan and overall the telecommunications sphere is that we are enabling people. We're enabling people to do some really cool things in their lives. And all my professional career, I was actually doing this, enabling people to transform lives around them, to build businesses, to build communications around them. And span of the countries where I used to work varies from Sub-Saharan Africa to Far East Asia, Middle East, and the CIS countries. So really interesting portfolio. And while, for example, in Azerbaijan, we're providing the latest and most advanced communication, and the country which provides probably the one of top 3 penetration of fiber to home connectivities. I work in a different country, and for example, my favorite was Congo, where in DRC we were really building communication, enabling people to make their living, to save themselves. And for example, in Congo, you put in the base stations on the border of Congo River, and people actually coming out of the jungle and build their livelihoods around your base station. So what really excites me, to change people's life, to enable people's life and give them communication as a fantastic tool of their surrounding activities.
Fantastic. So lots of people you've met, lots of places you've been. I expect you've got lots of air miles as well. I'm never sure that's a good thing or a bad thing.
This is actually a really bad thing because after you get in your first 1,000,000 miles and when you're coming back home and your wife is saying, oh, let's go and fly somewhere, and you look at the airplane and you're starting to get sickness just by looking at the airplane.
Yeah, I know. Excellent. So, and where are you on the kind of techie to management spectrum? Where do you see yourself in there, or do you kind of go across all of it?
So you see, years ago, it was a clear line between management and techie. So, and you either know how to write a code or you know how to what BCG quadrat structure looks like. In reality, nowadays, and especially with the ability of AI, confidential computers, supercomputers, you're starting to understand that unless you know how to code, how to work with the IT and technology people, you really cannot manage them. So very often you need to go and put your developers on the side and say, this is how you code this on Python. And only in this case, you get in their buy-in and their support. So no more those inspirational speeches and talking about vision and strategy. I mean, it was great 10, 15 years ago. Nowadays, you either know your subject or you don't know your subject. And if you know your subject, this is all the time when you can change people's life and really make your mark on the development.
Sure. I mean, I've been in roles where I've had to go into meetings with techies and they said, "Oh, well, we've got a problem with this sort of thing." And I said, "Really? Let's talk about that in detail." You can see them going white as they realize that you can actually talk the same language as them. That can be quite a worrying thing for them, right? So, okay, I wanted to maybe go into some of the things you've been doing. You talked about being in the telecom world and the communications world, and there's a lot of data there, right? I'm guessing that a lot of that is sensitive data. How has that changed? I mean, firstly, how's that changed over the past few years? And secondly, how has that changed how you think about how you manage it and how you manage the services around it? Has that become a different thing, or is it just more of the same?
So let's start probably with the most important thing, that this part, this thing which I have in my hands, or different version of this,
Yeah,
is probably the most intimate part of human life. Actually, it's even more intimate than money. This, if you think about this is the last thing when you touch before you go to bed, and this is the first thing you touch before you wake up or when you wake up. Actually, the guys in California very often they jokingly saying that when you wake up in the morning, you have two options: to check your telephone before you go to the bathroom or while you're in the bathroom. So you don't have a third option. So,
sure.
and this is what telecoms, those what the tech industry actually has done to actually change people's life. So being a telco in this ecosystem puts you in absolutely unique position, because every time customer opens his mobile phone, every time he sends the message, every time he answers the phone call, all this information is stored in a telco's environment. And for many, many years, telcos used to just to store this data in their huge data center. And by default, telcos always had a fantastic data center because this is how we produce our core
Yeah,
product.
yeah, yeah,
But we had to store this. Maybe in some places because of governmental requirements, in some places it's because of what we call lawful intercept. The data was always stored. And in some countries it was stored for 10 years, in some countries for 2 years, but it's not important. It's a petabytes of data, not gigabytes, not megabytes, petabytes, huge quantities of petabytes of
yeah.
data, which is stored. So traditionally, in initial stage, telco was just storing this data to meet the requirements of lawful intercept or governmental agencies. Probably around 15 to 10 years ago, we're starting to play with this data to see how we can use some business processes for mainly for internal process. I'm not going to talk about a couple of outlaws, couple of companies who are starting to really do some meaningful things, but really knowing how people moving, we're starting to plan our own base stations, where to put the network. Knowing where people live, we're starting to plan where to put the fiber optic networks.
So this
So
this is just planning your business processes. It's nothing. It's not even reaching out to them. It's just how
yes,
you can
it's our
serve
own
better.
stuff and
Yeah.
our own stuff. And it was very interesting because initially, when we are planning the network, your proper planning of base stations brings you huge return on investment, because you put in
Right.
the base stations 200 meters to the left or to the right. It reflects immediately on the quality of service, on amount of customers, and all of those key important elements. So 10 years ago, we as telcos, majority of telcos, starting to flirt on, let's build those models and let's try to sell it to the market. So, for example, in reality, if you think about this, when you put in the base stations, you're putting in the places where people move and or people stay. And suddenly you're starting to think about home office pairing, you started thinking about movement of people, unitemized data, and suddenly B2B people coming to you and saying, if we know how to project where to put the base stations, what's the difference in putting a base stations or a store? So you retail store, and then the retail, street retail, putting the store 200 meters left or right. actually makes all the difference. In reality, actually 10 meters makes a difference.
Yeah.
And when you live in the developed countries, there's some alternatives are available. When you live in what we call countries in the transit economies, in those, telcos has the best data by far. And you're starting to play with this data, and based on the data, you can project where to put the store and what time to open the store, what time to close, how many people need to be there. Based on this data, you can project what's the average receipt size, what the revenue projections are. So, and this starting to be very interesting. I'll give you a couple of examples which are absolutely non-normal for European or for American. So, when we did our analysis, we found out, for example, that the best place for a bakery shop, and this was a story with a real client, is next to the traffic light. It's not
Why?
normal, yeah?
Yeah,
But
sure. Why
it
is that?
is. Yeah, you see, the great thing about mathematics is either ones or zero. So I guess because of the stoplight, people are just stopping on the pedestrians. Pedestrian, yeah, this is not
Okay, good.
United States where everybody's
Yeah.
in the cars.
Yeah, yeah.
Pedestrians, actually, they're stopping in front of stoplight, and while they're waiting for the stoplight, and in South Africa we call it
They
robots.
smell the
They
bakery. They
smell and
smell
they
the
go and buy
bread,
the
right? Think,
stuff.
okay.
Yeah, very interesting. Yep.
Yeah.
Another good example, while we're talking about bakeries, in Europe or United States, stores are located in the distance from one to each other. In the countries in the transit economy, very often you're going to go in the streets of Islamabad or Baku or Tashkent, and you see similar stores actually located next to each other. In Tashkent, I know the place where 15 pharmacies, almost identical pharmacies, are staying next to each other. In Islamabad, I know places where 6, 7 bakery shops are located next to each other. And for European and for American, it's very difficult to understand. Why would
Yeah.
you have similar store with very
How do you
limited?
differentiate? Yeah.
Yes. In reality, in the countries in the transit economy, again, this is mathematics. Actually, it makes no difference if you have 5 similar stores. So when we did a mathematical analysis based on a pure data analytics, we clearly find out that people actually the behavior is very different. People are going to the area to buy medicine. And that's why when you have multiple stores, people are going to the multiple stores which are identical, but still people are going, and 4 or 5 or 10 of identical stores make no difference in the revenue perspective. So coming back
And
to
I
telcos coming back to telcos, which is starting to be very interesting. So we're starting to have these huge amounts of data, and B2B teams, or business to business sales, teams starting to go and trying to sell it. And now in telcos, a huge paradox started. On one side, B2B team can sell for this amount of money. This is a revenue which they generate by selling Geoanalytics, scoring, revenue models. But you're looking at the same models which you apply to your telco business, to your core. Your savings on CapEx are 20, 30 times bigger than what you can sell outside. Because normal telco spends billions of dollars a
yeah,
year in the CapEx, a huge amount of
absolutely. Yeah, yeah, sure.
fiber up, and properly planning base stations brings much more saving and a bigger impact than what you can sell outside. So yes, I'm going to be careful with the wording here. It sounds very interesting, exciting. We're using the word sexy to sell geoanalytics to external clients,
Yep.
but your return on your core business, it's 20 times bigger than doing this. And this was the story around 20 years ago. Now, when you are starting to see more AI, and I'm going to be very careful using this word because it's a really pop word right now. It,
I'd noticed, believe me,
yeah.
I'd noticed. Yeah,
Yeah.
sure.
So what you're using machine learning for something, it actually brings out lots of efficiencies. So now impact of big data analytics and what you can bring to the market is starting to be very comparable to what you're doing for internal services. So what we see that in the last couple of years, actually selling the services outside, selling the analytics in the proper, obviously, in the proper GDPR compliance, CDPR, all of those
We'll come
proper,
back to that. We'll come back to
yeah,
that. Yeah, sure.
all these formats starting to be substantial revenue streams. And as a core telco services are starting to be commodities, yeah, starting to be commodities, this is actually starting to bring absolutely new perspective and new positioning of the company. Because this is where telcos are starting to be innovators, starting to be organization with bringing absolutely new elements of customer engagement. And suddenly from this one, you go into the next stage, which where we are facing right now in most of the telcos, when you combine data from multiple sources, the value of this data enrichment, starting to play absolutely different level. So yes, as a telco, we look at the movement of people, and by far, people movements are the best one from the telco perspective because we have the most accurate data. And
Sure. So the location data is really valuable.
really valuable, and location data from telco is much better than location data from anybody else.
Sure.
Because you guys in Meta or in Google going to say, yeah, people using Android or people using iOS, so we know whatever comes from the apps. And this is true for developed countries. For the countries in emerging economy,
Yeah.
not everybody using smartphone. Not everybody using iOS, or not
But there's a
everybody
SIM
using
card or an eSIM in every phone,
in
and that
every phone.
means
Yes, and we have this information. Yeah, and even in United States and Europe, people think that everybody using Meta products. It's not actually true in the emerging markets. Not
yeah, sure.
everybody is on Instagram. This is a shocking news. Yeah, not
Ah,
everybody is on the Facebook. So people using different messaging platform, people using different social networks. So it's very difficult to know what actual behavior of the customers. Telcos, we know exactly who is there, when they are, what are they doing. The way in telco world, we're saying we know which SIM card sleeps with which SIM card.
yeah.
Sorry, it
No,
sounds vulgar.
I
Apologize,
absolutely.
but it
Yeah.
is, of course, it's all related to customer consent and all this stuff. So as telco, we have lots of interesting data, but when you starting to add this data with other sources, so when you add telco data and, for example, data from financial institutions, suddenly quality of information about customer starting to be absolutely different. And when you add to this one, you add information about FMCG sector. So level goes to different.
Explain people what FMCG means in case they don't
Yes,
know.
fifth.
I don't. So.
Yeah, okay. FMCG fixed consumer whatever. All those yogurts and milk and all the stuff that you buy in the grocery stores. Yep.
Retail type
Retail type
buying
of stuff.
behavior.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
So when you're starting to combine telco, bank, and the retailer, putting all of them together in one ecosystem, suddenly all the information starting to go to the different level. So it's not only about where your customer goes, but you can actually tell when the customer is staying in the local grocery store, and you can send a promotion item to him about that Danone yogurt versus yogurt of any other manufacturer, of Nestle, because you have information what kind of yogurt customer bought last time, what his purchasing power, and if his purchasing power is from financial institution, when he's standing in front of the store where you know when to send the communication. So now it's not only geographical information about customer, but also his purchasing power, his retail behavior. So it brings everything to what we call 360 degrees information about customer, which is super relevant, which elevates the knowledge of the customer to absolutely different level. But this brings a huge question how you combine this data, because everybody is a king. Telco are thinking they're the best one and not going to give the data to anybody else. Banks saying, oh, we are super financial institution, we are own the money, and we're not going to provide all this confidential data. And retailers, or we serve billions of people across the world, so we're not going to share any of this one. So
And there are advertising platforms as well who want to get involved, I guess, right?
exactly, because they want to send the message itself. So, and this is just a simple example when the customer staying in the local retail store and we want to send to him promotion of Nestle while he is shopping for yogurt, knowing that previously he was buying lots of Danone products. I'm just making up the brands, not to
Yeah, yeah,
offend
sure, sure.
anybody, just giving an example. So this is a power of data. The challenge with this power of data, though it is available, there are 4 different buckets. But somehow those 4 buckets needs to talk. And to me, this is where the future of data analytics actually is. For me, this is when we'll be able to crack this, will bring all this data stuff to absolutely different level. And I'm not talking about useless, all those fancy ways, AI, please draw me a picture of the beautiful girl. No, I'm talking about real stuff which has real impact on real
And,
people.
and real value, not just to the telco and the retailer, but also to the customer, right? Because hopefully you're providing them with something which is going to meet their lifestyle and their needs at a real time. I looked it up. So FMCG is fast moving consumer
Super
goods. And
good.
absolutely, yeah, it may be that maybe it's not just yogurt. Maybe you've seen that they've just bought a chicken, and you know from previously that they enjoy hot food. So it's time to sell them a curry pack or something like that, right? So you're actually hopefully improving their experience for real, not just from a retail
I would say I
experience.
would take it even more than this. In the
Hmm.
contemporary world, you see, we live in this world of informational pollution. We have huge amount of information which is coming our way. And with this kind of merging different data about the customer, we can show to the customer right thing in the right time, in the right device, which is also very important, on the right device. And this actually enhances people's life. It cleans this informational pollution, brings the simplification of customer experience, and drives absolutely different level of customer engagement.
Sure. So we've covered well, you've covered a whole bunch of stuff there. I want to roll back to some of the stuff that you've mentioned and maybe delve a bit further in. But there's already more questions that I want to be asking. So the first thing I want to talk about was the stages of data. You talked about that. So in the first point, there's government requirements for around maybe auditing or some of the lawful interception pieces. So that's kind of pot one. And then you've got all of the information that you need to keep as a telco so that you can be doing CapEx or location new services or planning in terms of time for when new services should be, all of those sorts of things. And then in the new world, we've got information which can be useful for external B2B type things. And this is all data about your customers, right? And some of them may not be your customers directly. They may be roving from other networks as well, I guess. But it's all information about individuals, people, and businesses. And I'm kind of interested to think about how that is sensitive, who it needs to be protected from. Is it just bad hackers out there? Is it nation states? Is it internal actors, within the telco? Is it worrying about regulators? Is it worrying about businesses trying to steal it? Who are the attackers? Who are you worried about? And what is the type of data that you feel you need to be protecting? And how do you do that? Maybe lots
So
of questions. So,
let's make one step back.
mm,
Let's talk about addressable market at first. Yep. When you
okay,
mentioned you collect information about your customers,
yeah,
I would say I would make it much broader. I would talk about you have information about telco customers or about everybody.
sure.
And let me elaborate more on this. I'm sure when you call in your friends, you're not calling only your friends who are on the same mobile network as you are. You actually don't care.
These days, I don't know. I used to know about 20 years ago because it cost more, right? But not
Yes,
anymore.
not anymore. Yeah. So when you're calling somebody else or when you're sending a message, you don't really care if it's on your network or another.
No.
Needless to say, to enable this, as telcos, we have interconnect. So all this information goes back and forth. So suddenly you're starting to collect information not only about your customers, and if you have good data analytics team, about customers of other networks.
Yep.
And in this one, what really plays very interesting, that humans, we are social animals, which is very interesting. It means the people who are surrounding you are actually more or less the same people as you are. And we prove it mathematically that one of the services which we're offering in emerging market countries with a transit economy is a bank scoring. Again, in Europe and United States, you have all of those scoring Equifax type of companies who provide a financial scoring. When countries don't have a long ago established financial ecosystem, they don't have a scoring companies. Actually, I'm going to make a comment here about well-established versus a new financial organizations, and probably your colleagues on the Western world not going to like me for this one, but let me be controversial about this
Fire
one.
away.
In my part of the world, and needless to say, I represent countries with the transit economies.
Yeah.
I don't even remember when last time I paid cash. Probably 15 years ago. Most of the people whom I live with don't understand what check is.
And I live in the UK, and we're closer to you than we are to the US. And Europe and the UK is much more like that. I know exactly the last time I paid cash. It was when I bought a Chinese meal from a takeaway restaurant in a village about 5 miles away, because they don't take cards. And every time I say I'm never going to go there again, because I had to go to an ATM and get cash out. And who does that, right? My kids are horrified by such behavior.
Yeah. And, 2 weeks ago, during the governmental lockdown in the States, I had to get some document in the United States which needs to be apostilled. So, and because I lived outside of the United States, I had to find a friend or relative in the United States who were able to write a check to send a physical check on my behalf to some governmental agency. People are still using money orders. Yep.
Sure.
In the countries with a transit economy, because
That's
we
gone.
jumped,
It's
it's
gone.
gone long time ago. People don't even understand this. So this coming back to the issue of financial scoring, knowing who your surrounding peoples are, we can easily predict what your risk score is, and we sell the service to financial institutions.
Sure.
We're doing verification models, which we also sell to financial institutions. Because again, when you're in the United States and you go in to borrow money for your next car, they're asking, where do you work? Give us a phone number of your employer. So they're
Employer.
going to
Yeah.
call. In reality, in a contemporary world, why do you need this one? Because if your SIM card stays in a certain location from 9 o'clock in the morning till 6 in the evening, it means you work there. So, and if it's suddenly not there at this period of time, it means you either lost the job, or you're on holidays, on a sabbatical leave, but this is very different. So, coming back to the scoring, with the proper mathematical models, most of the telcos nowadays provide scoring for your own customers and the customers of other networks pretty much at the same quality level. So you don't need to be on the network. So addressable market, when you're talking about telco, it's actually nationwide model
It's
plus
much
all
bigger
the
than just your customers.
customers.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So we know lots of things about all the people in the country, because penetration of mobile is close to 100% or more than 100% in almost every country right now. So this is addressable market. So where this data, whom the data needed for? So needless to say, you were referring to the governmental agencies who control this, and obviously by law and based on the license which you as a telecom operator have, you have to provide this to the proper authorities.
Sure.
Needless to say, it needs to come with a court order, with a proper business process around this.
Yep.
So it's not like one of those cowboy activities. But when the court order comes in, we release a certain data, and all this properly drives and properly implemented. In terms of protection, obviously, we need to protect it from all different sources, from external and internal. That's why in the telcos, probably in the last 10 years, we all created a huge cybersecurity teams who specializing in a proper cybersecurity. And this is not only DDoS attacks, kind of simple stuff, but it's a AI driven man in the middle. So lots of different fraud tactics which are coming to us. And obviously telcos who understand how important cybersecurity is, we put in the proper line of defense there. First line and second line of defense really to protect what we have, and amount of investments which we're putting in the cybersecurity is exceptional. So we all really understand that yes, the fraudsters are trying to come in to steal lots of data, but so far telcos are built in such a way that we by design have a much better protection than the typical IT companies, because we were built in a different
that makes a
levels
lot of
of
sense.
network. Yes.
Yeah, and you've got these government requirements that you've had to worry about for years anyway,
from
so
the
you
beginning.
understand. Yeah,
Yeah. So
absolutely.
we really
Yeah.
understand cybersecurity from the beginning, and we built with the cybersecurity in line. Also, we understood that from inside, there can be lots of people who are trying to get the data here and there. And
Yep.
from this one, proper processes that all telcos are implemented. And it's not a new thing for us. It's been there for a while. So we look who logged into the system, what they're doing on the system. Do they pull customer call details, records, or whatever they do it? We clearly see, monitor, and control all of this stuff. So uh, different levels of defense are implemented, and they're constantly improved, constantly enhanced, because we clearly understand that most of us are kind of national infrastructure providers. So if
Yeah.
we're going to go down, actually,
The
in
whole
fact,
country has issues. Yeah, no,
yes.
that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, and if you think about this right now, access to mobile network for human is as important as access to food or water. Trying to switch your mobile phone for 15 minutes and see what's going to happen. So
Sure.
that's why we clearly understand that the level of protection is very important, and we are protecting it from the beginning.
And how do you see new technologies like confidential computing, which protects data in use, not just in transit, sort of playing into this awareness and the, as you say, telcos have always been down there for always innovating. How are telcos thinking about using confidential computing? Super Protocol has, mechanisms whereby you can protect your data whilst it's actually being acted on and while the applications is running. Are telcos taking these up on board? Are they using them, and how do they see them as part of their bigger picture?
For us, this is a kind of pathway which we are taking, and we're experimenting a lot with the different ways how confidential computing will be, because needless to say, we need to be 100% sure or 200% sure
Of course.
that this stuff actually works and actually delivers value. It's not about the cost or savings. It's about protecting customer data, which is for
Well,
us
and
is a
that's
super
where the
important.
cost and savings comes in, right? Because if
Yes,
if things don't work, then the cost is worse than implementing it in the first place because you
exactly.
have, yeah. Oh, of
Or
course, absolutely.
if you don't have confidential in your mobile network, it means you don't have a mobile network. So
Sure.
why even to have the business? You can close the shop and all go home. Yeah. So from this perspective, for us, different ways how to really fine tune and enhance operational security and data protection is more and more important. I would argue that even more important than what you have in financial institutions. And we always kind of measure us against financial institutions.
That's interesting. So is that the telcos have always said this is who we're going to measure ourselves against, or
Y-
is that a
Yeah,
new
because it's
thing?
always a competition between us and the banks, because we are looking at the same share of customer wallet.
Yep. Yep.
And again, I'm talking about countries in transit economy. So people have an option to spend money to browse internet through mobile data, or to go and buy another, I don't know, coffee and croissant. So we're going after this share of wallet. So it's always kind of competition between telcos and the banks. Also, it's very interesting in our countries, and the same in the United States, we have different regulators. So us as Ministry of Telecom and central banks, all the places, a competition between regulators, competition between all their kind of enabling organizations. So we always look what we have, what banks have. And from this perspective, always comparing.
Yeah, this is all great. I really want to come back, in fact, to some of the stuff you're talking about. You talked about coffee and croissant again, right? So about how combining data really adds value, and that's an area where confidential computing and Super Protocol have done work with data clean rooms, where you can actually combine data from different providers, retail and banking and telco and the advertising platforms, and prove that none of those different actors can see all of the data, but you can actually extract data in ways that provide huge value whilst also keeping those important people, the regulators, happy, right? So what opportunities do you see of all that combination? We've talked a bit about that already, but given that you can prove that no one can misuse it, including internal actors, where does that take you? What's the next stage in terms of what you can do with these technologies?
Yes. Again, if we're talking about financial world and talking about telcos, let's look at those two. They
Sure.
probably really the complement the most. The tricky part is telcos, we usually have millions of customers. Let's say we have this many customers. Banks, and this is the reason because in a country, usually it's 2 or 3 telco providers.
Sure.
So it's more or less you divide country by 3, and this is what your addressable customer base is. So let's say we operate in a country with 100 million people. So
Yeah.
each telco more or less having around 30 million customers. I'm making up the numbers.
Yeah, no,
Somebody is a
that's good.
market
Close enough.
leader, somebody, but let's
Yeah,
say
yeah, yeah.
30. In the same time, because of the banking system in the same country, they probably have 30 banks. So the customer base of each bank is a couple of million customers. 30 million versus 2 million. And of course, each bank would love to go in bed with the telco because this is how they will be able to cross-sell and upsell their services to much bigger
Yeah.
addressable market. Because they're one of 20 banks in the country. It's difficult to differentiate. But now suddenly you're making a proposal of some service to the customer whom you have a financial scoring in the right time, in the right place, and in the right device. And I cannot stress how important the stuff about right device, because people usually underscore importance of this one, because some advertising needs to come, or some offers needs to come on television screen,
Yep.
some of them on a mobile device, some on PC. And guess who can only offer those?
I'm guessing it's the telcos.
Oh, yes, exactly. So that's why you're trying to add financial companies with their strong financial muscles who looking to get a customer base, and you merge them with the data of telco with a huge customer base. So and suddenly you build in a very elegant proposition to the customers, which is great from the go-to-market perspective, which is great from data enrichment, data provision, all of those great things.
Yep.
But now it comes back to the issue of how you combine this data in a secure way. And then
Yeah.
secure from, not from the cybersecurity perspective, because it's given. Let's say it's the best cybersecurity in telco, best cybersecurity in the bank.
Okay.
But this
Yep.
data needs to travel between those two organizations. And when it travels, have 2 challenges. One is a customer consent, that customer allows this data to travel, because maybe I don't want my data from the bank to be transferring to telcos.
Yep.
So I need a customer. And the most challenging thing, to get permission from the governmental authorities, because Ministry of Telecom and the central bank, they usually don't agree
Have
on
an
everything between themselves.
Yeah,
Yes.
okay, fine. They have interesting relationships. Okay, I get
Yes.
that.
The only way to combine this data, if you have some intermediary organization,
Yeah.
or even better, technical protocol, so it's no humans involved. So if a technical protocol enables to piece of data combine with other piece of data where only one party can see it, it actually addresses the biggest challenge, which is the
And
challenge of the regulator. Because the bank, central bank will never allow financial data to be
To
shown
go
to the
directly to the telco
telco.
and vice
And
versa.
and the telco and
Yeah.
the regulator of telecom industry. So that's why the secure protocol actually enables this data enrichment. So very interesting. We have a really exciting customer value proposition for
Yep.
consumer because it builds the world without informational pollution. Very interesting, clear world.
I love that phrase, informational pollution. Carry on, but I love
Yep.
that phrase. Yeah.
Thank you. We actually thought a lot about this one.
It's good.
Building
It's
the
good.
world without informational pollution.
Yep.
So it's not a part of the peace, Paris Green, whatever this accord. Yeah, but it's should be
Yeah.
there because to
That's
me
good.
it's not less important than global warming.
Okay. Carry
So
on.
customer value proposition to consumer, where we send the proper communication in the right time in the right device to the right customer. It brings a huge value proposition to the B2B client who wants to promote,
Yep.
communicate their service. And it's at the same time with the confidential computing and addresses the challenge which you have with the regulator. Makes all the sense. Some people try to experiment on this one. We're very confident that what we have done with the team is really interesting. And we see the first results of this one. We see in a couple of CIS countries where we together combine data between telco, retailer, and the bank. It really transforms the user experience. We saw when we combine data between telco and the bank itself, two-party marriage actually delivers also lots of value. So more parties you're starting to have, the stronger value is
Just gets bigger and bigger. Yeah.
bigger because you have starting to have 360 degrees customer knowledge. And this
Yeah.
starting to be extremely exciting because the quality of data, quality of the results is starting to be much more interesting.
And you're unlocking new business models, targeted offers you talked about, loyalty programs, whatever. You can build this because you've got so much data and these different parties, right?
And I would say even more, I strongly believe that in 10 years from now, telecommunication service is going to be free of charge because
So
of the
commoditized that it's going to be
it's
free, right?
commoditized through the different financial model. And the only financial model which we can support the huge CapEx, which we all are investing in telco world building.
Yeah.
2G, 3G, 4G, 5G. Now we're starting to talk about 6G. All of those fancy networks, which cost huge amount of money. But through using the data, we can really differentiate ourselves from other players, employ the very different models of operations, and really deliver very different services to the customers.
So, George, we've talked a bit about how telcos have been doing this stuff for a long time, right? They understand data and not just data, but actually providing services because that's a large part of the business of a telco these days is actually providing compute services. Given that combination of the ability of knowing how to provide services, but also understanding how to manage the confidential side of it, the security side of it, do you see telcos providing services externally to other businesses to make use of that? You know, some of these confidential computing capabilities that are in these chips that, you have or you know how to manage. Is that something you see expanding over the years?
Let me elaborate a little bit here. So, telcos, we're not only running the data centers, we're also running two more important elements. So one is obviously data centers because from day one we're building our own data center where all of our equipment with something HLR,
Yeah.
VLR, all
Mm.
this technical stuff which is important for fixed and mobile network. They're sitting there. It's a tier 3, tier 4 data center with all the fancy gear implemented there. In
Yeah.
addition to this, we as telcos, we're running backbones to really connect those data centers to internet.
Yep.
And when people are talking about GPU or this fancy new word NPU, the key important element is the low latency. And when you're running your own backbone and you connect to the proper kind of internet access point.
You know about that because you absolutely have
You
to.
have
Yeah.
to, yeah.
Okay.
So we know how this low latency backbones actually run, and we are only few of organizations who are doing this one. And we not only know, we actually run those data centers and those backbones. And our backbones running, let's say I'm in Baku right now, but they're running from Baku to Sofia, from Baku to Frankfurt. So it's a proper, really proper industrial grade backbones.
Yeah.
We run in our own fiber optic, undersea cable. So telco's been doing there from the beginning. And now what's very important is low latency, which you're using on this connectivity. Super important thing. And the
Sure.
third element, which we've been doing from day one, is the last mile. To connect from this data center, we are fiber optic to your office, to your facility, either on the fiber or on mobile. And we're not just providing this last mile, but we're providing a secure last mile. So telcos, I'm best positioned for working on the data within the country. And specifically for countries in the transit economy, we have two more very important aspects. We have access to the proper data scientists or young professionals, because most of them want to work with us. And we have this test when we are bringing a new data scientist to our data center, we just go in and open the racks of servers. And there are like
Mhm.
lines of those racks. And most of our data centers the sizes of football fields. So if you see that the guys are so excited about this one, what he sees, this is your data scientist. So this is very unique thing. And we also carry brands. Again, in our
Yep.
part of the world, telco associated brand is usually perceived as very innovative, very prestige, some organization which you want to be associated with.
Yeah.
So we're perfectly positioned to do this. And many telcos in our part of the world are starting to already play on this one. So we have assets because we've been doing this for last 30 years.
Yep. Yep.
We have technology because we are using this technology. We know how to use this technology, and it's just keeping focus on driving this further. So,
Yeah.
uh, protocols on confidential computing brings this experience and bring the service to the new level. So, we've been doing the data the basic way for our internal purposes, as exactly you mentioned in the beginning. We're starting to
Yep.
flirt on the second. This is a multi-layer cake. The second layer,
Sure.
we're starting to
My
flirt.
favorite type of cake.
Yes. Hopefully, it's not a healthy carrot cake. So hopefully, it's a Black
No, no,
Forest or
no, no.
just something serious. Yeah.
That's fine. Yeah, chocolate. It's
Good.
good. Yeah.
So we're starting to use the data for our own services, where we use them for network provisioning, also for where to
Yep.
put your own service centers, where to put your own stores. The next layer, we're starting to flirt with the market where we service our customers using our data only. The next one, when we're starting to combine the data. And this is the most exciting thing, where we believe confidential computing is coming, where we believe that we are playing the absolutely unique role. And we are playing unique role because we have data, we have data centers, we have storage capacity, we have knowledge, experience, we have backbones, and secured last mile. So this is what telcos in emerging markets, in the markets with the transit economies, are actually doing. Lots of our telcos are very visionary, and I can say telcos in the Middle East, Far East Asia, CIS countries are doing really transformational things. And when I'm meeting with my buddies, whom we went to in the same schools and they're still in the States, some things which we are doing, they're miles ahead of what telcos can do in United States or in some European countries for a number of reasons. But it is a perfect position for telco to enrich their data, to deliver meaningful value proposition to the customers, and exactly I mentioned a number of times, to build the world without informational pollution. This is a world which makes us much better as human beings.
So it sounds to me that it's not just the services and the physical capabilities that you think you are going to be offering. It's going to be that with the data. That's where the real value. So people will consume maybe just some compute power that you can provide, But actually, to get the real value for everybody, it's going to be the data combined with that makes more sense. It's a much more holistic view of how the cake is put together, right? The ingredients for the cake. I'm going to use the cake as
I
a
think cake is a good
metaphor, I think,
story.
for
Yeah.
this.
So yes,
Cool.
one layer of
Excellent.
the cake is good and it's properly well cooked. But if it's the five
Yeah,
layers, it's always much better.
much better. Thank you. So, one question I like to ask guests is if you're talking to someone in your field in 2 to 5 years, what do they need to know? What skills do they need to have, or what mindset do they need to be taking on that's going to allow them and the business to succeed and really to happen? Where do people need to be going if they're looking to get into this field?
I'm gonna say something very controversial because you would expect me to tell, oh no, everybody needs to program in Python and needs to have like really this AI skills. I
Right?
personally believe that people who are gonna make change within the next world needs to go in the creative fields. Something which is creative, very artistic. And it doesn't matter, playing piano or be an artist to draw something. But when you have a different perspective of the world and you can be really creative, the rest can be done by technology. I know it's very controversial. If you have non-standard approach, you can create the next world. If you just want to improve existing thing, it's going to be the famous.
Incrementally.
It's going to
Yeah.
be a famous story about Henry Ford, yeah, about giving the
Yeah.
faster horse.
Yeah.
Somebody who wants to make a change needs to come from different industry, preferably not knowing anything about how it is done today, put very controversial approach and not to be afraid of taking risks.
Thank you very much. So another thing I like to ask George is now we've never met in person, right? And I worry about deep fakes. You know, deep fakes very good these days, and I like to ask my guests to this podcast. Yeah, I want you to prove to me that you're human, that you're not a deep fake, right? You're not an AI deep fake. And so I'm going to ask you a question, and I want you to answer in such a way that convinces me, right, that you're probably actually human. So my question for you today is, why don't our cars fly?
Actually, our cars do fly, and there are
Do they?
cases,
Okay.
there are places where they do fly, and they have plenty of countries where people do experiment with this one. But the real reason why the cars do not fly is because we don't have a proper ethical standards. And the ethical standards which live in the contemporary world actually doesn't allow a car to fly. It's not about engineering. It's not about the speeds and fuel and efficiency. It's about the fact that when the car is flying and when it's going to crash, whose fault it will be when the car is going to crash. Because it's a software which is written by some very smart guy or some AI. But as human, I can tell you this, that we as human developed the world which builds on ethical standards of 2000 years old. We still have this left cheek, right cheek, yeah, all this biblical stuff, which really migrates very slowly. In the contemporary world, technology is moving much faster than our ethical standards. So when the car is flying, actually the engine or whatever software was written by AI by some company. And when this car gonna crash into another car, whose fault it will be? Would it be a fault of an engineer who programmed this one? Would it be a fault of the passenger who is sitting in the car? Somebody who bought this vehicle? So ethical standards which we
That
have are not the ones which support the development of technology. That's why even driverless cars on the streets are not available right now, and because we don't have ethical standards. That's why flying cars are not available right now, though
that
people experimenting.
That sounds like a very human answer. I'm willing to believe for now, George, on the evidence you presented, that you are probably an actual human. So thank you very much indeed.
Thank you, Mike.